Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jon Myer podcast. Today's topic, the role of automation in FinOps. Now, I really want to talk about how it works with public sector or government. And before we get there, how about we give our guests a chance to introduce themselves?
Hi, Blake Kelly with Strategic Communications. I am the National Cloud Sales Manager for a public cloud, public sector focused sales and solutions team. We predominantly focus on state and local and federal customers and have been doing this in the industry for about 20 years and focused on public sector for the last 6 or 7.
Hi, John. Thanks for having us. CEO of Hyperglance. Hyperglance is a cloud management platform focused in cost optimization, security, and compliance. Our differentiators start with the cloud architect. So we like to say we're the FinOps tool designed for cloud architects, and we take on customers in the public sector, federal, DoD, and commercial spaces.
Steve, we've been talking about FinOps a lot, and we haven't really touched the surface of automation in FinOps. What is automation in FinOps, and what does it mean to you?
So automation is something that, first of all, people shouldn't just jump to, as we have a couple other podcasts this week that I really enjoyed. And it's something that there's really kind of layers to the conversation. So if you look at monitoring, right, there's a lot of data that's resident, not just in billing, but just in the estate of cloud, just basic inventorying, right? And understanding what your posture is on that in any one snapshot point in time, but more importantly, over time, right? And it's that overtime piece where automation can really play a role. But what we need to be careful about, and this applies equally in public sector, federal, and commercial space, is not just jumping to an automation answer, right? There needs many times to be a conversation around the reference architecture and what that means to performance and user experience. A lot of different variables that go into the conversation, and right sizing in an automated way may not be the answer for that particular set of app or particular set of data, or it may be the right answer for it. So it's something. It's not a dim switch you just turn on and walk away. You really got to consider all the different factors that go into the stack and what makes sense.
Blake, talk to me about what does FinOps mean within public sector, because can it really work in public sector?
FinOps is absolutely right sizing, but it's also leveraging the right services and architectures to best scale with the elastic and microservices, container services, et cetera, that are available in the cloud. That also includes financial instruments that allow customers to, if they have a predictable workload, to be able to take on a commitment in exchange for a lower cost while staying in that service.
So, Blake, talk to me how FinOps really relates to public sector and what your role is around it specifically. Are you helping implement it, the culture? What does it look like as it relates to public sector? Because I know in commercial, it's not like for like.
So my role in helping our public sector customers for their cost optimization journey is providing sometimes automation of these services. There's a lot of tribal knowledge that is not there, keeping up with all of the nuances and changes to the available services. Security posture, like Steve mentioned, is super important. So we, as a reseller for our public sector customers, do this often on their behalf, where they don't necessarily have the deep level experience and tools and services and the ability to scale across a vast array of customer sets.
I know FinOps is new, not only to everybody. It's been around for a couple of years, but it's really taken off. So it feels like this is the first year for FinOps. When you talk about it from a public sector perspective, you can't implement it as fast as you can in a normal instance, like commercial, right? An enterprise, like, hey, we can get this done in 6 months. Can you really achieve FinOps in its maturity in a government sector?
Yeah, absolutely. The public sector often relies on resellers like Strategic Communications to do this on their behalf. Federal government, for instance, cannot commit future fiscal year dollars to a commitment to help lower their cost of their services. But we, as a federal reseller, contractor can do that on their behalf.
Like there's a lot more involved when it's utilizing another tool or a platform like Hyperglance from commercial to public sector. There's a lot more stringent rules and security that have to apply. Talk to me on how you're utilizing Hyperglance for your customers.
Yeah, so Hyperglance is a great cloud management platform that provides security posture management, automation, observability, insights, trends into utilization. Um, Maybe more in the public sector, there is an issue of not just training and a knowledge gap, but a workforce gap. Every agency is understaffed, and the cloud is new to them as well. So they are needing to use solutions and tools like Hyperglance and from service providers like Strategic to help really increase that security posture and fully maximize their cost optimization opportunities.
Steve, when you designed Hyperglance, when Hyperglance was put together, did you have the government in mind? Was there more work to do for your product to meet the needs and requirements of government? Or was it already built, ready to go with some simple tweaks?
We were government ready day one. We designed, and our first set of customers came from public sector broadly, and more specifically DoD. So we've talked about this in the past, but our deployment model is local. It's we're not SaaS. We never bridge data over the wire, over the air, and it's not stored externally. It's always run in RAM, and it's high performing down to the second. And that's what a lot of public sector customers are looking for right out the gate. It's kind of table stakes to even get in. And then not to get too technical, but even going beyond that, our image, our machine image that gets deployed locally inside of a governmental GovCloud instance is required to be what's called STIGGed. That means when it boots up, it has a certain set of configuration parameters that it locks it down and makes sure that it's more high performing and secure. So you have to design your software with these things in mind. The alternative is what they call FedRAMP, and that's a very tenuous kind of process, multi-year, multi-million-dollar process. And quite frankly, in talking over the last few years around that, it's not that government can't go down that path. It's just that actually they prefer our model because they like the fact that their data is cocooned. We never phone home. There's no hole. The phone's home, comes back. We don't even see their data, which is a key differentiating point. And Blake and I have talked about this in the past in terms of that it's a differentiator, but it's a hardline requirement for us to succeed and compete in business in the federal space.
Steve, talk to me about the types of automation that's available by Hyperglance.
Well, first of all, we have to look at what we're ingesting into the platform. So we have an auto discovery account, organizational or auto discovery capability, where we're ingesting all of the account information and all the resources that sit underneath that within a GovCloud or a commercial cloud instance. So it's constantly pulling and seeing what's been added, what's been dropped. You can toggle those on and off as your use cases warrant. And so that's the first piece. The second piece is we come pre-packaged with over 250 preset rules. A lot of those are compliance and security, but a significant subset of those are cost optimization, cost wastage, and cost identifiers in terms of just instantly going out there, scanning the environment and looking for opportunities to drive out idle resources or abandoned resources and optimize resources that do have high utility across the monitoring. Lastly, we incorporate API and workflow integrations with tools like Jira, Slack, and others for workflow enablement and modification and alerting in terms of getting to anomaly detection. And we just recently deployed a new panel to our main dashboard that is, in fact, drill down anomaly detection, where you start at an account level and then you drill down to the zone, and then you deeper into the resource level, granular level, and then you can blow out an exact anomaly trend analysis over 12, 18, 24 months and looks at patterns of data. And if you have outliers, you can double click into that and it'll be alerted to that. Again, this is not, in the industry, there's a lot of fatigue around alerts and a lot of fatigue around too many logs being posted up. That's not the intention in terms of how we design this. The intention is to facilitate an intelligent conversation around the architecture with the FinOps organization to drive the necessary changes that need to happen. We're not looking at doing anything that would automate a function that negates a conversation that needs to happen and bridge that channel.
Like you were talking about before, cost optimization, automation of right sizing and doing those tasks. In a normal commercial environment, automation can be done seamlessly. Nobody has to know about it. It's done. Does that work in government? Is a change I don't want to say a ticket, but a process in order to do improvements within cloud in general? So if I have to change an instance from one type to another, do I need to go through a rigorous process or can I automate that?
Yeah, interesting question. You can automate it, and sometimes it actually depends on the contract. Some specific government contracts line item out the specific build of materials and machine type sizes, et cetera, where no, they actually are locked in. So that's where we actually, not to get into contracting speak, but we encourage the ability to have flexible contracts that allow for any of the services available the cloud platforms.
I had a conversation with someone part of the FinOps. They were talking to me specifically around public sector. And an example they gave me is an AWS workspace, right? You provisioned out 100 workspaces, but you only had 60 contractors utilizing them. You had 40 sitting there ready to go running. It was cheaper for them to leave these instances, these workspaces running, than to shut them down because it took 6 months to get it signed for 100 of those workspaces.
Wow.
Talk about like automation and cost savings that could be possible around that. What type of automation can you do and should you do as it relates to FinOps in government?
Yeah, 100%. That is a common, unfortunately, use case I've heard time and time again where there is so much over provisioning where you buy for a future need, right? And whether you're going to use it or not. So the need to not only shut services down, but thin provision based on file that's on usage hours, what have you, um, is super important, and also leveraging the right services that can elastically scale with the needs and the demands.
Talk to me about how you're using Hyperglance, the reporting, the visibility capabilities that it presents to you that you could do for not only right sizing cost optimization, but utilizing it through a FinOps process. Do you see the report? Do you have to walk through to the customer in order to say, hey, listen, here's how we can implement it. Here's how we should change the business application to follow the FinOps culture in general? Or do you just go and do it? Or can you do it? Or does it take a 2-month process where it's costing me $10,000 now?
Yeah, again, back to the contract, unfortunately, in public sector, but it depends on the contract. Some of our customers, we're doing it on their behalf. It's in our statement of work or PWS, performance work statement, or we're letting the customer do it on their own. So leveraging Hyperglance if our team's doing it on behalf of our customer, they are using Hyperglance to find those anomalies, act on them on behalf of the customer, make either changes within the scope or ask or make the recommendation if it's outside the scope to get the concurrence from the customer to make the changes or just provide that communication back up.
Blake, I think you're telling me about a number of challenges that are presented when you try to automate FinOps within public sector. And the biggest challenge is the contract. It's exactly what it seems like. If you don't have that stipulation that an instance type needs to be, an EC2 extra large, and you have the flexibility to change it, automation is easier.
If you have the concurrence and scope in your contract to be able to make that change, absolutely.
So Blake, we've talked about the challenges not only with contracts. Can you do it? Is it in your contract to do it? But what are some of the other challenges when implementing automation within FinOps?
Yeah, absolutely. On the topic of the cost savings instruments, for instance, in the AWS realm, there's concepts of reserved instances and savings plans and other capacity commitments that you can make in exchange for the cost savings, like we talked earlier. But that's not an automated process. We have time and time again seen customers come to the table late when there's recommendations that they've lost out on massive amounts of savings. So by leveraging tools like Hyperglance and services from Strategic to do that automatically or um, very quickly thereafter, after receiving those insights, we can act much faster than a government customer that's really not their job to. They're more maybe more concerned about security posture and hardening the environment and other innovation areas. So being able to free up our customers to do higher value add opportunities on their behalf, and plus we're the experts. We also have the buying power of hundreds of customers, and where we can actually de-risk holistically across our customer base in the realm of these instruments on their behalf, and then everyone benefits as well.
Steve, talk to me about Hyperglance's capabilities around RIs and savings plans and the visibility that it's bringing to Blake and his team in order to achieve some of those results that their customers are looking to.
Right. And so, as we've stated before, our whole architectural point of reference is that cloud architect and their ability to have intelligent conversations with their friends in finance or FP&A, right? And so, at our core, we're really a recommendation engine. Keyword is recommendation, right? So we'll stack, we call them baseball cards of recommendations, and they can carry that not just through go do X, but get contextual reference in popping out a reference architecture diagram around that, and then looking at the cost structure around that, and even toggling on and off different interfaces and doing what if analysis around that. So it's much deeper in terms of the comprehensive nature of the recommendation and where you can drive action off of that. That's kind of default mode. We also have the ability to automate certain pieces. And then just as a point feature, once you understand what you want to do around an RI, you can point on a particular resource within that estate. You can poke out to the native AWS console and take action there. So it's very seamless, very easy navigation to go do what you need to do. We realize not everything is going to sit inside the walls or the portal of Hyperglance. And so, but we want to make it easy to move in adjacent systems to make those appropriate changes. Lastly, we do have the full stack automation around remediation. So if you want to automate policy, and what's powerful about the platform is it's very zero code configurable, right? So you can clone rules. We have over 260 rules. You can clone those and adapt them to your specific environment. Again, all running in RAM, all running inside, cocooned inside of the GovCloud instance. So it's very powerful from that perspective in terms of actions you can take. And it's as basic as awareness and understanding and recommendation and contextual recommendation, and as advanced as this condition happened, go automate this.
If I could just add to that, totally plus one, Steve, on the automation piece. Steve hit on an important topic around the fact that Hyperglance runs in a cocoon. A lot of the CMPs, cloud management platforms out there, are doing a phone home or are multi-tenant hosted and commingled potentially in someone else's data center. And so the concepts of FedRAMP, moderate, high, even potentially running in the classified levels is not possible for other cloud management platforms. That's why our customers love Hyperglance, because they control the security posture. It's not someone else that they're having to audit and check on the compliance. So their platform does not phone home. There's no way for them to reach back in. There's no back doors. This thing is solid and trusted by our customers at all levels.
My first instinct to ask about not phoning home is updates, security patches. How's that handled, Steve? Because I want to know how Blake would implement that on his end and how long it takes to implement that. Because normally it's automated, right?
Right.
If you're a SaaS provider or a local one that phones home, all updates are notified and you click the button and you go.
Right. So first of all, Hyperglance could be up and running on average in 30 minutes. Full suite. I mentioned earlier the automation of subscription pull-in into the tool. So it's really just pulling down the machine image into the environment, and then upgrades are the same context. It's user initiated pull down of updates and application of that. And in the case of classified environments, we can we call it sneaker net, get that update kind of physically over to that environment.
So Blake, talk to me on how you do the upgrades for your customers. What does that process look like?
Sure. Well, we have to go through the standard change control processes, and then whether or not we are managing the Hyperglance installation on behalf of the customer, or the customer's managing it, self-managing, we'll apply that upgrade. Sometimes it's late, and because change control takes a while, but that's the benefit of Hyperglance. They're in control, the customer, whether we're doing it as their service provider or they're providing it themselves.
Could you quickly talk to me about any challenges you came across when implementing Hyperglance?
Yeah, Hyperglance has been amazing to work with our customers and our support teams. There are cases where we have unique environments. Not every environment's the same, and we have to get creative and sometimes customize certain feeds and API integrations with Hyperglance. But yeah, it's pretty seamless otherwise.
I like it. Steve, how has it been working with Blake in order to implement Hyperglance and to provide him the tools to automate things for his customers as it relates to FinOps?
I love the question because strategic communications has been a great partner, like all of our partners, but more specifically, as I've stated before, is about focus for us. We're maniacally focused on building world-class software targeted at the cloud architect or the technical user for the purpose of FinOps and other use cases, right? But what we don't intend to be is that managed service, even one-time professional services provider, and build an intelligent network of providers like strategic communications that have that first touch and ongoing touch with the customer. And then we get more specific around the government space. That is an area that's not easy to navigate all the time, right? And we talked about contracts. We talked about how you're sometimes restricted to a PSW, and you're basically operating in that environment, right? So how do you affect efficiency gain, and how do you affect change control, and how do you affect the monitoring and the actionable things that you can do that the platform provides? Well, you need a partner like Strategic Communications that can kind of transcode what that looks to a commercial customer. It's a slight variant when you're looking at a mission within the Department of Defense, as an example, right? It's not a one for one; it's a one prime, and there's things that you have to consider. And that's a body of knowledge that you don't just acquire in a day, a month, or even a year. It's years of understanding how those environments operate and how you're going to operate more specifically within them. And so we rely on our partner like Strategic Communications to do that for us.
So Blake, we've been talking about some of the challenges that when you do automation, right? Some of the challenges that you came across and how Hyperglance actually solved those. But let's talk about automation in general, right? This doesn't necessarily have to do with Hyperglance, but what are some challenges customers or people are running into and misconceptions around automating FinOps?
Sure. Services are always changing, and innovation is happening. So automation's not a silver bullet. Automation's great for a static environment, but in environments that are constantly changing, new services being introduced, automation has to be revisited, and it can complicate things if you don't keep it simple. So using the KISS method for automation is key.
What is the KISS method for automation?
I'll just say keep it simple, silly.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to use that. I might use another word in it. All right, everybody, we got to wrap things up. And before we do, Blake, how can they find out more about you and your company?
Yeah, reach out to me, bkelly@yourstrategic.com.
All right. And Steve, how about you and Hyperglance?
Yeah, hyperglance.com or srobinson@hyperglance.com.
Blake, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Steve, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, John.
All right, everybody, this has been another episode for the Jon Myer podcast. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and notify, because we're not out of here yet. Do you have content? And now we're out of here.